At the vigil of this feast, I was moved by the depth of the readings and hymns, and this morning at Lord's I was struck by this particular verse, where love and loving kindness are, the God of love will always be. He binds us with a weightless chain that leaves the willing captive free. You can't quite see from where you are this, but it's something similar to what I have in my little refectory, which is the Martha did years ago on the wall in chalk, and it's still there. And this is what we're at, if we want to be. You who are still young will be close still to the experience of resting upon Daddy's knee or Mammy's breast, and it is the same homeward bound that is here. Rest on the breast and hearing the love that moves the world, for the universe speaks of love. When just ordained and sent back immediately to Rome, in the early hours I'd often put a little sort of portable bag on my bag with my minimum and celebrate on some altar, because there are about 500 churches around in Rome, and you could celebrate on some of the altars if you wanted to, before dawn or at dawn. This was one I would go to on the first Friday sometimes. It's in the Jesuit church. It's the original now. The original of this is painted on the Sacred Heart altar, or I think it's the Chiesa del Gesù, big Jesuit church in the middle of Rome. And at the elevation, one was holding the Lord before the Lord, as it were, that is, love before love, and one was addressing and consecrating love. That was the atmosphere of those early masses. And this picture actually followed me right through school days. For some reason I had it always with me in my room and so on, and therefore it's rich already in memories. Another thing which had hit me in that period was what I came across by chance. The fact that in the 70s they had analysed the miracle of Lanciano and found it to be myocardial tissue. Therefore the Lord is specifically handing over his heart and his love. His Eucharistic heart, as it were, is what we're surrounded by, what we are invited to engage with. This morning I was unexpectedly taken aback by a comment which somebody who was making a quiet time in retreat in the Hermitage said. What a beautiful Mass, so tranquil. Of course, we're used to that, because the contemplative mode is always tranquil. And it hit me that perhaps that is not the experience out there anymore, that people do not necessarily feel that interiority, that gentleness which characterized the Last Supper and the resting of the beloved disciple. And it was, although we had incense, actually a fairly simple but fully sung Mass, because if one chooses to avoid things like books and bits of paper, and uses, for instance, Taizé chants and things that one knows, then the mind is free to fly, and the eyes can be closed, and one can engage with all one's faculties. I have, over the years, noticed elements of good liturgy and bad liturgy, where this was or was not favoured. as you may know, the more complex a liturgy is, the more the danger is that the draining can go in the perfection of the material execution. However, what tends to happen in a good situation is this: one grows into a movement, so that things happen as it were in automatic pilot, and we don't think about them. And then too, the mind is engaged. One rests upon a movement. But there are also, unfortunately, grave errors in this. If one is not careful, one can actually, in the interests of the external perfection, forget the intention and the optic, and end in a situation where, to get to the perfection, the love that one is honouring and supposed to be engaging with is being very badly wounded, when actually severe correction takes place, showing that proportionately things are upside down. I remember years ago being told this: there is always, in all that pertains to the service of God, this unwritten rule that one never draws attention to an error. And this concrete example was given to me. If you find yourself in a situation where, for instance, you are in the sanctuary and you're supposed to go from A to B, you start moving, and always slowly, never rushing, and halfway across the sanctuary you realize actually you should be going to point C. The correct thing to do is this: you carry on with great dignity at the same speed to point B, invent something to do, and with great conviction and authority go with calculated cool to point C. If one does it wrong, one makes a second error by going to point A, B, putting the brakes on, scratching one's head in public, and then making a 90-degree turn to point C. Do you see what I'm saying? Liturgy should be something of the dignity of the angels, otherwise it's pure theatre. Now, liturgy does matter. In honouring the Sacred Heart, we are materially giving time and honour. We will have a procession. We will also consecrate ourselves, and indeed the whole world, to the Sacred Heart. Therefore, we will do it interiorly and exteriorly well, and we will engage. It is an error to pull out this one principle of the Second Vatican Council, a noble simplicity, to actually waive all others and settle for a minimum which is little short of pure laziness. It is also an error to presume that people are incapable of true appreciation, and to bend over backwards so as to give what we think a gratifying experience to those who are in the young bracket, forgetting the faithfulness of all those lovely people who have been faithful from Sunday to Sunday since their youth, before the Second Vatican Council, and who now only have thumping noises, whereas there they grew up to something other. Which brings me to what the Lord in this feast was asking for: reparation. In the parish I grew up in, there was an altar to the Sacred Heart. On it was the apparition of the Lord showing his heart to St. Margaret Mary Alacoque. Those of you who were with us when we started celebrating the Latin Mass in public right at the beginning in the Visitation Convent will remember that over the altar we were looking at the fresco, not a fresco, actually a mosaic, even more expensive, of that apparition every Sunday. And to see this love of the Lord is to see what we're at. To see that there is more bonding between our God and our soul than there can be even between human beings. Think of the maximum love you can imagine on earth and multiply that by infinity, and you have some vague idea of the love which has this heart for us on a personal level. So what does he complain about when he comes there in 1690? The context, remember, is Jansenism, when people quite often did not go to communion very often or hardly at all. There was a fear and trembling in the air which led to a coldness and distance. Now he shows the heart. Behold this heart, which notwithstanding the burning love for man, with which it is consumed and exhausted, meets with no other return from the generality of Christians than, now listen to this. See if you can remember it at the end, you little people. Sacrilege, contempt, indifference, and ingratitude. Sacrilege, contempt, indifference, and ingratitude. As it happens, the very word indifference or indifferences was used again centuries later by the angel at Fatima. You remember that prayer, Most Holy Trinity, and so on, in reparation for the outrages, sacrileges, and indifference. So we've got two of those coming back, by which he himself is offended. And ingratitude is something that we have seen in our generation, because still when I was young, Thanksgiving was still a part of the parcel somewhat. Now, because people talk immediately in church, it is not possible. This, therefore, is the invitation more than ever on this day and in this year of the Sacred Heart. O you who pass by, see if there's any pain similar to my pain. He is hurt even in his church. I go back before I finish to where I started. The whole atmosphere in which we are bathed at the altar is that of the upper room. Therefore, all liturgy should be an experience of divine and human warmth. There should be no pain caused amongst people, and there should be an awareness that we are with essential love. That love which created the universe. If one looks at Christians in society, normally they do produce something of that love in their interchange. Multiply that by a whole nation, and one does find that in Christian countries, compared with Muslim countries, for instance, there is an element of helpfulness, openness, neighborliness, charity in the air. The present Holy Father, right in front of where he is, in St. Peter's, has right now made a whole system to help those coming from these countries of war and violence, to give them the basic needs of life, even simple things like the possibility of shaving, just in front of where he is. Charity is felt. Ireland is a good example. Outside Ireland, until fairly recently anyway, the Irish had an international reputation for being kind, and well merited. And still, when we go around our country villages at least, one is aware of being counted as being part of a society which does care. They will greet you, they will help you, they will not leave you stuck. In the Welsh Valleys, something was similar, e.g. when there were great disasters in the mines, very closely knit Christian communities. In his encyclical Evangelii Gaudium, Pope Francis underlines the importance of coherence and points out how ridiculous a situation is when, for instance, a community of consecrated people does not live charity and cannot possibly hope to draw other people in. Not that long ago, I was in Italy and I heard this from the monk I was talking to. There had just been on Rai Uno, that's the main television, at prime viewing time, this article, therefore watched by 50 million people. The postman was delivering the mail. He was going up the path to this enclosed monastery of nuns, and he heard something he didn't expect to hear. He heard voices, and the voices were becoming quite violent. They were nuns, and they were highly pitched, and they were becoming quite dangerously violent. As he came in, he heard that the pitch was such that they were beginning to scream and to threaten, and he got quite concerned. He stood there in front of the monastery, dumbfounded, and when it got to such a point that he thought this is no longer safe, he contacted the police, who came in to calm down these holy women who were living love and charity to the full and hoping to draw in vocations to their holy life. Sometimes one finds true charity in the most unexpected corners. People who know that they made a mess of their life, but there's some spark there. Traveling people who have perhaps done all kinds of things officially wrong, but there's still something good there when it comes to helping someone else. I've been deeply moved to see the goodness of many a traveling person, male and female, by others judged, cast aside as category B, but well able in their misery, sometimes because of their misery, to reach out and even to squeeze hard to say thank you for showing that you understood. We'll now consecrate ourselves and the whole human race to the Sacred Heart. This is now published by Pope Pius XI in the encyclical Miserentissimus Redemptor, May the 8th, 1928, and ordered to be solemnly recited each year on the Feast of the Sacred Heart. O sweet Jesus, whose overflowing charity for men is requited by so much forgetfulness, negligence, and contempt, behold us prostrate before thy altar, eager to repair, by a special act of homage, the cruel indifference and injuries to which thy loving heart is everywhere subject. Mindful, alas, that we ourselves have had a share in such great indignities, which we now deplore from the depths of our hearts, we humbly ask thy pardon and declare our readiness to atone by voluntary expiation, not only for our own personal offences, but also for the sins of those who, straying far from the path of salvation, refuse in their obstinate infidelity to follow thee, their shepherd and leader, or, renouncing the vows of their baptism, have cast off the sweet yoke of thy law. We are now resolved to expiate each and every deplorable outrage committed against thee. We are determined to make amends for the manifold offences against Christian modesty in unbecoming dress and behaviour, for all the foul seductions laid to ensnare the feet of the innocent, for the frequent violation of Sundays and holidays, and the shocking blasphemies uttered against thee and thy saints. We wish also to make amends for the insults to which thy vicar on earth and thy priests are subjected, for the profanation by conscious neglect or terrible acts of sacrilege of the very sacrament of thy divine love. And lastly, for the public crimes of nations who resist the rights and teaching authority of the Church which thou hast founded. Would, O divine Jesus, we were able to wash away such abominations with our blood. We now offer, in reparation for these violations of thy divine order, the satisfaction thou didst once make to thy eternal Father on the cross, and which thou dost continue to renew daily on our altars. We offer it in union with the acts of atonement of thy Virgin Mother, and all the saints, and of the pious faithful on earth. And we sincerely promise to make recompense, as far as we can, with the help of thy grace, for all neglect of thy great love, and for the sins we and others have committed in the past. Henceforth, we will live a life of unwavering faith, of purity of conduct, of perfect observance of the precepts of the gospel, and especially that of charity. We promise to the best of our power to prevent others from offending thee, and to bring as many as possible to follow thee. O loving Jesus, through the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, our model in reparation, deign to receive the voluntary offering we make of this act of expiation, and, by the crowning gift of perseverance, keep us faithful unto death in our duty and the allegiance we owe to thee, so that we may all one day come to that happy home where thou and the Father and the Holy Ghost livest and reignest, God, world without end. Amen.
The old familiar parish. This is the altar whereon many dreams did linger o'er long hours. 'Twas here that love was strong, when yet the morrow's coming beams did dawn on waiting dawn. For here did move the might that moved the world, and I recall that oft as morn soft shone, and eve did die, I'd hide and huddle well, and hear thee call, good master, hind this veil where thou didst lie. Yet I thought not that I one day would come again to memory's land, or here would stand to call thee gently back to this our home, made all of things well known, or that this hand would hold the chalice that my father held. Here, even here, where ears and old tears wailed. There is a place where peace and mercy meet, where humankind the rays of Godhead can in darkness greet, and healing find. There is a manhood where divinity looks out to us from all eternity. A stream of light, a beam of ancient grace, given in this hour for us, oh, in this tender face, behold the power that at a time that bid the moments be. I see this case that waited long for me. A master drew me close to this soft heat that melts in this the coldness of the heart where all things meet. Exempt thy bliss, and in a smile